Okay, I just want to start by saying thank you so much for taking the time out to sit down and chat with me. I suppose we should start sort of right at the beginning. So, Billy, where did your love of being on the stage begin?
Um, boy, you threw me right into the pond. The one between us, I guess. Well, it was sort of like it was a talent show,
Hmm.
and yeah, and for some reason, we had a song back then. I'm an elderly person called
Hmm.
Alley Oop, and and so what I can't remember. I think it was Mr. Mambelli. He came up to me and he said, "Can you kind of gather a bunch of boys together and do sing alley oop on the
Hmm.
stage at the talent show?" This was like,
Hmm.
I think, the fifth grade.
Wow.
So that's where my first stage experience happened. Although I had also been a drummer.
Hmm.
I mean, still am to an extent. And so when I was drumming, you're performing, so
Yeah.
you're on a stage. So that, but I was thinking more theater performing. Never
Hmm.
occurred to me that you could do anything more than play the drums on a stage.
Oh, fantastic. And so how did Robert, how did you and Billy cross paths and how did that partnership first form?
We go back.
Yeah.
We go back. I never heard the alley oop story, by the way. It's making me want to sing the song. There's a guy in the funny papers. We all know alley oop 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 oop.
Yeah, and the reason
Anyway,
it
he lived way
the
back a long time ago.
Hmm.
Billy and I met at Brown University,
Hmm.
and we probably met either at some sort of mixer in the dormitory that we shared, Poland House, or we met on stage when we were in an original
mus
musical,
yeah.
which was about Nell Gwynn, by the way.
Wow.
Yeah.
It was called Nell. Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, so I think that was around that time. We were
Hmm.
freshmen in college.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. And so just
Yeah.
going back to Billy then, how did the writing get introduced? Because you said obviously from the talent show. What made you want to sit down and write your own stuff?
Oh, so I do. How do you,
Yeah.
Bosh, you're doing your research. Okay, so in other words, what you're saying is I can't hide anything. Okay. Um, well, I mean, when finally I started in high school
Hmm.
doing theater, I mean, I always loved writing or hearing words because, as Bob knows, my father always loved to read to me.
Hmm.
And as that Bob also knows, is my father also decided to read because he loved Shakespeare, but he also loved Sherlock Holmes.
Hmm.
He
Oh.
always read in a British accent.
Hmm.
So, which led me to believe that anyone who was an actor spoke with a British accent.
Oh, wow.
This is literally true. So that when
Hmm.
I first went to England years ago, and I got out at wherever it was, the airport, and then took the tube, everybody was talking British, and I thought they were on a film set. Anyway, but the point is, I loved words because my
Hmm.
father loved words, and and he also had this capacious memory, and he could remember things, and so anytime he talked, it was like a story. So when it finally came time for me to do theater, which was about I think about 10th grade when Miss Crane yanked me out of the hallway and said, "Here, you come here. You come into this room and you act this or that." I finally realized that acting was something that happened with written words,
Oh, wow.
Hmm.
which I wasn't that clear about up to that point because I had
Hmm.
been reading, in my English classes, you're reading poetry and this back
Hmm.
then and novels and or in your history class you're reading nonfiction.
Yeah.
But it was not really until Miss Crane put um, Miller's The Crucible in front of me that I said, "Oh, you mean these things that they've been speaking are
Hmm.
actually on a page?" I mean, I think I probably knew it generally, but not as
Yeah.
specifically and concretely. So that's what got me um, thinking that the way people spoke on the stage was a way you could also write.
Hmm.
And So when I was starting to write in my English classes, I was trying to, in high school, um, I had my English teacher, Mr. Levinson, kept on saying, just write descriptively.
Mm.
Don't write abstractly, write descriptively. So I remember that one of the first essays that I got an accolade for was I was just trying to describe what it meant to roll around in a pile of leaves in the fall.
Wow.
And he said fantastic. That's great. Blah blah blah. So I'm sorry that that's my source
Mm.
of loving writing, but it took me time to write a play again until much later
Mm.
because I'd been writing other things.
Hmm.
I was writing about this point of view that Bob also knows about that I use when I'm teaching actors and singers called standing down straight. So I was more doing that kind of
Mm.
nonfiction writing. And then about 7 years ago, I'm sorry if I'm going on too
No,
long,
no,
but I
no.
will until you say, stop in the name of Bob. Okay, so whenever that happens, um, so about 7 years ago, I had had a theater movement company that
Mm.
ended. But it occurred to me, it was probably more than 7 years, maybe even 9 years ago. It occurred to me that maybe this was my time to start writing a play because I had been writing play dialogue
Mm.
into some of the movement pieces I'd been doing.
Ah.
So then, and I had actually come up with a 20-minute play about a detective and his client, which then turned into, when I started writing a play, Jimmy Blues and the Mystery of the Accidental Dancer.
Mm. Oh,
I
wow.
wrote a play with music and song in it. So I started off, and then that eventually became what happened
Mm.
after that.
So, Rob, where did you first discover Reverend Brand? How did he come into your orbit?
So, the way that that I started with this project, it actually began with the music. I was fascinated for years by the very raw field recordings that were made by Lomax and others in the middle of the last century.
Mm.
Um, where he would, literally transport huge amounts of equipment in the 40s and 50s and even in the early 60s before equipment got lighter into different communities in Appalachia and other parts of the South and other parts of the country. And it was a massive undertaking to just save the music from oblivion.
Mm.
And when I first heard some of these on a CD, I was blown away.
Mm.
Then when they all came online on his website, he's long passed, but
Mm.
they made the archives available, and then I realized there was just tons and tons of music, and I got completely hooked, addicted
Mm.
to the music. I grew up in the South, but I grew up in the suburbs as a suburban boy.
Mm.
And so, none of this music came into my consciousness in this pure,
Mm.
unfiltered way, the way I was hearing it. So immediately, usually as a director and a teacher, rather than acting so much, I have acted, but I had not done as much of it. I started thinking about uh, creating a theater performance, maybe as a director, that would incorporate this music. And I looked
Mm.
for some different material. When COVID hit and I was all by myself, here in my
Mm.
yard and in my house, like everybody else, I somehow the ridiculous idea landed on my doorstep that, hey, do a solo show. Then
Mm.
I didn't have a narrative hook to put it all on. Coincidentally, as you probably remember, there were really strange and disturbing things happening in our country.
Mm.
Things like the Unite the Right march on Charlottesville, all kinds of just bizarre things. And as a Southerner, I was embarrassed, I was furious, I was, looking for something that sort of matched up with this. And yet I kept being attracted to the post-Civil War period or the Civil War period, just old stuff.
Mm.
And I had a very old dog-eared copy, paperback copy. I could tell you the price on it, would tell you how old I am.
Wow.
But I had the I had this paperback of Henrik Ibsen's verse play Brand, which was about a fanatical Norwegian
Mm,
pastor. And I kept returning to it, thinking, well, why do I keep reading this? This is about Norway. At some point, it struck me that I could adapt it to the South
mm,
of in the 19th century, that I could become this preacher telling this story backwards, as it were, almost as a spirit visitor
mm,
coming out of the woods, confronting the audience and saying, okay, you're here. I must need to give my testimony. And as you may or may not know, in certain churches, the testimony is
mm.
standing up and telling
Yeah.
what you did, why you did it, and looking for some sort of justification, I suppose, in the eyes of the Lord.
Mm,
So I that's where it started. That's where I got the hook. I started to feel out ways that the music, the songs themselves might also be incorporated.
mm,
And that's part one. Part two is Billy's arrival, which is very key
mm,
to things actually succeeding. But that's the part one of your answer that you're
mm.
looking for.
So obviously then Billy as the director, as there was hinted on there was a change then when you came into it. So how do you approach these sort of when you had the story, what was the process like for you to refine it?
You're talking to both of us now?
Oh, sorry, that was for Billy.
Yeah, go Billy.
So, um, what I do on the stage and what I'm doing in my classroom and what I'm practicing
Mm,
is a very movement driven, or more specifically, rhythmically movement driven source of acting and singing.
mm,
I'm also, as I think I remember telling you, I was a drummer, and all of my music was jazz when I grew up, and rock, and I
mm,
played both in bands. So that lasted through all of my other iterations of what I did up until the time I worked with Bob. Um, and so and Bob was generous enough to say, "Hi, can you listen to this?" And he sent me the script and he started doing it. And my approach, again, to words
mm,
is um, for the, and everybody in theater knows, is it's for the action in the words.
mm,
And since I knew Bob from Brown days when he was a very movement-driven actor, what I was mostly, besides being fascinated with what he found, because I was in complete concordance with him about the fact that this was not just a story about the 19th century, this was a story about right now,
mm,
in terms of that kind of fanaticism.
yeah.
But what I started listening for were the movement episodes, if you will,
Mm,
in the script. So all I was doing was trying to conceive in my own imagination, but then I would share with Bob movement choices. I mean, I'm just putting it very
mm,
simplistically. I'm saying, you go, it's blocking. You
yeah, yeah.
go there, but also given the fact that embedded in his script were other characters
Mm,
who were coming from Reverend Brand's imaginings, as well as Reverend Brand's own personal history. There was this stuff going on in his head
mm,
based on reality, but also on his own fanatical imaginings, if you might say.
yeah.
I just made suggestions to Bob about how he might more clearly embody them.
Mm,
So that was my way into the script,
mm,
including every now and then I would say, well, I'm not quite sure we need that word, or perhaps you could put in this word
mm,
so as to strengthen the movement action.
yeah. Fantastic. So just going back to Bob then, obviously you talked about it being inspired by the sort of fanatical movement. So obviously, taking a religious person from that inspiration must be quite controversial. So how do you sort of balance that, uh, the sort of the idea of religion that people have built, that many people have built up in their heads? How have you sort of combated that?
You know, what's really interesting, Reese, is that it hasn't turned out to be controversial.
Okay.
And it may prove to be in different parts of the world or the country.
Okay.
I haven't been to the South with the piece
Mm,
yet. Um, but what's been really interesting to me and encouraging is that folks get it. They get that this is as best as Billy and I were able to make this happen. This is for 65 minutes a fully dimensional person.
mm,
Um, I think it's partially related to that I came from this
yeah.
as a previous Southern Methodist, right? I came from that those sets of beliefs. And although my own spiritual journey has changed a
Mm,
lot over the years, um, I respect it for its its values,
mm,
uh, and I, of course, abhor some of its excesses or some of
mm,
its blind spots
totally.
in terms of organized religion.
Hmm.
Um, I also believe, really, when I go back to thinking about Ibsen, I don't think Ibsen was condemning anything or in particular trying to be that controversial with what he was. I think my understanding was that he was trying to grapple with something
Mm,
large that was in him as well.
totally.
And I will just share with you one anecdote.
Hmm.
One of my performance venues in Venice, California, which is here in the LA area, um, last year, my sister, who still sings in the choir
Mm,
at the church in Santa Monica, brought um, her new pastor, his wife, her longtime choral director and wife, who's also a singer.
mm,
They came as a foursome to see the show. They hung around afterwards. They were fascinated by the show. The the preacher, Reverend Batson, wrote one of the nicest and most articulate review that I've used on my website of anybody.
mm,
So they got it.
mm,
And it reinforced something that a colleague of mine at USC said when I first shared with him. I was maybe a little worried that it might be controversial. I said, "Do you think Christians will be offended by this?" And he said, "No, I think Christians just want to be seen."
mm.
And
Totally.
so um, that's a long-winded way of saying that I don't worry about that anymore.
Hmm.
I think that people go with it. They go with and perhaps it's also because it's distanced by the fact that it's an historical period.
Mm.
Um, I
Oh,
hope that helped.
yeah, no, totally, totally. So, for those who kind of haven't heard the story before, Bob, what is the story of Some Dark Valley about?
Right. So basically, a spirit visitor appears in 19th century garb. You know, at the beginning on a bare stage. It's a dark stage. Um, has a moment with the audience of confusion.
Mm,
Uh, what are we all doing here? Then realizes along the lines of giving a testimony that that must be what it's about.
mm,
Because he also feels a little bit disconnected from reality. He's like wandering through the woods, but not quite sure where he's
mm,
going. So the testimony then sends him backwards in time to like talk about the impoverished background, the loneliness as a child, an encounter with a black family that was kind of serendipitous for him for a while. And then moving on to decisions to become a circuit preacher, kind of filled with his own vision of God that he wanted
mm,
to share. um, uh, realizing that he'd sort of been brought full circle back to the place where he grew up, marrying, having a child, and the different decisions that he makes along the way that um, could be justified by, a very stern and narrowly focused point of view
Mm,
about salvation, but which he realizes as it goes on sort of burns everybody who follows him in one way or another.
mm,
So there's a consequence to all of
mm,
this, and hopefully by the end of the play, there's some sense of a possibility of grace
mm.
and redemption.
Oh, totally. And obviously, Billy, you mentioned earlier this sort of the different characters coming into be. So from a direct, I know it's a one-person production, but how do you stage someone playing multiple characters at as the show progresses?
Wonderful question. What you do is you keep on re-etching
Mm,
the body of the actor, meaning when when the Reverend is just being himself, as it were, that's a very different body
hmm
from, for instance, when he's embodying his wife or embodying himself as his younger self, or when he's embodying this spirit creature, this wild girl, as he calls
mm,
her. So my job is only to make that clear to the audience
mm,
that there's a switch happening now. And Bob does it beautifully. And what one has to do with movement is clarify. It's kind of like a sentence. There's a capital letter, then there's a period.
hmm
So you're simply trying to phrase the movement. This is where he starts being this person. It
mm,
finishes here clearly, and then boom. And it can be a quick change or a slow change, but whatever it is, it's a sort of a Brechtian
mm,
moving out of the play into another character. In other words, it's sort of like winking at the audience and saying, well, okay, so that was that, but now I'm going to do this. Are we all clear about that? Not that Bob says that,
mm,
but my job was to make sure that the audience was, in a sense, being clued in,
hmm
because as being a watcher of theater since I was a kid, I certainly know when things are blurry.
mm,
And it's probably one of my curses that, one of the ways I'm trying to help the actors I work with educating themselves into being an actor is to um, work with much more of a consciousness of how they use their energy,
mm,
shape their energy versus how they shape their look, because the look will come if the energy comes. So Bob, who is a kind of a multi-energy kind of performer, all I would kind of do is simply say, okay, there, let's bring the intensity down,
Mm.
bring the gesture down, or there we can bring the intensity up,
mm,
make the amplify the gesture. Now you should move faster. Now you should move slower.
mm.
It all sounds kind of dry and objective, but that's my way into acting.
Yeah.
It's always been, what I'm watching on the stage is movement, and the actors who have always just killed me were the ones whose bodies were
Yeah.
playing music.
Mm,
And
Mm.
which is how I teach actors. I say, okay, so you guys now you're turning your body into an instrument, so let's play it. Anyway, that's that again, that's a little long-winded, but when one is a director and one is working with an actor who is willing to make these switches dynamically, rhythmically, and spatially, because it's all of them, space,
mm,
time, and energy, then it's all fun.
mm.
And then when you're working with someone who is hesitant about making those changes, you kind of accept what you have, of course. But for me, the effect is blurrier. It's
hmm
less clear.
Totally.
And I
Totally.
should I should just mention there's one important thing that Billy planted in my imagination that he hasn't alluded to. is that actually becoming the other characters was for myself as the Reverend was something unexpected, or rather, I'm being pulled,
Mm.
almost
Mm,
being, I'm almost
Mm.
being suddenly inhabited by my my wife,
mm,
or the wild spirit girl, or myself as a younger person. It's like I'm being compelled to suddenly reenact that. That's been very helpful to me because otherwise, Rhys, as you could probably intuit, it would be just a technical
yeah.
narration device.
Mm,
And I think that when I do it well enough, the audience understands there's something else going on.
mm. And obviously, you hinted at there, though, Robert, is obviously there's those different roles, and you bring them to life. So not only do you write it, you perform in it yourself as well. So what is that experience of staging your own production like, of knowing those ideas prior to going into the room and not taking direction, particularly from other people? You already have that preconceived idea of what you want.
Well, that's why it's so wonderful to have Billy here
Mm,
today, because it's, you know, yes, I started writing.
hmm
I did start writing. I did start writing it out in dialect. I did get up here in my own yard right here,
mm.
which I could show you if I tilted this around, and and um and and try it. But in the early days, it was narration primarily.
Mm,
That's probably what I conceived of, is like this guy comes out and he's got it in rapid fire, kind of filled with the spirit, has got to like deliver this to the audience.
mm,
Um, where Billy, luckily for me, Billy offered to direct,
mm,
and brilliantly for me, I decided to say yes to everything.
hmm
Because look, Reese, I usually direct, and
mm,
I'm a pretty strong director. I'm collaborative up to a point, but then it's
mm,
like, okay, this is the way we're doing this. So I think it occurred to me, thankfully, that I needed to just drop that guy and be, in the cauldron of experience here with, the head witch there, like stirring the pot
mm.
for me, right?
Yeah.
And leading,
Mm,
leading. And although I wouldn't say I was I wasn't a pushover. There were moments, there were things that I said, no, this is important. Wait. Because I also want to bring up not just the movement, not just the direction. This is a brilliant dramaturg.
mm,
This is somebody who's so well read and so in touch with language and the language of theater, and literature in general, that when he says a thing, you got to listen.
hmm
So it could be sometimes, forgive me, Billy, but it could be sometimes a little bit hard.
No,
You
no,
have to
no.
listen to it
mm,
and just accept it,
Well,
right?
no, but you're
But
asking people to change.
mm.
yes, but really, I would say 90% of the time the man was right. Right?
Mm,
It was like, okay, wait, Billy, I feel like this is too on the nose here. I didn't want to be that clear. And he's like, yeah, but the audience doesn't know. It
yeah.
doesn't know. The audience doesn't know where you're going. All right, then we need more information. Or I would say, no, wait, I wanted to do more about the Civil War and the effects of the on the population, everything. No. There's enough. We've
Mm,
got enough. Let's move on. I want to know more about what happens next. So this was the dramaturgy. This was necessary. Um, Only while pat myself on the back was realizing it's necessary,
mm, totally.
right?
Mm,
Kill it here or expand it there and just
mm,
go with it.
totally. And
Hmm.
obviously, Billy, you talked about sort of your musical past and your upbringing. And obviously, this show does contain sort of the traditional music that we talked about earlier, the sort of excerpts you found. So, what do you think they add to the story and to the production as a whole?
The songs you're meaning.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, this might sound like a strange reference, but I grew up admiring Fred Astaire.
Hmm.
And what Astaire perhaps still is the model of is knowing how to make passages from talking to singing to dancing to back to singing to back to talking.
Mm.
And it's the whole thing is a fluent enterprise with
Mm.
there's no there's no snags or stumbles or bumps.
Mm.
I keep remembering, when I'm working with actors, I said, you just want clunk. But you're trying to make music. Music doesn't go clunk.
Mm.
And what Astaire taught me was that there is a possibility of making your own body music,
Mm.
kind of a hyphenated word. And so when it came time for Bob to sing, all that I needed to do, because I thought all the songs were great, I thought they were judiciously placed
Mm.
and their content varied enough. I think maybe sometimes I said, maybe can you do that slower? Only because I was trying to hear in my ears
Mm.
differences between the songs. But all that we worked on was, the songs came out of either his speaking or his pausing
Mm.
in reaction to what he just said.
Oh.
And I think all we needed to do was I had a voice teacher once who said, singing is only speaking in rhythm.
Hmm.
And all that I was helping shape, if you will, or root or direct was uh, not, I was trying to I think sometimes Bob, and this is only one of the things I may have minimally helped her with, I think Bob was sometimes in a rush
Mm.
to get to the next thing. And because a song is a different kind of amplification of a character, meaning you're taking it to a different level of aural, AURAL,
Mm.
and also optic reality, I just wanted to make sure that there was a smoother entry into it and then entry out of it. And that's what I learned from Astaire. And I think Bob does that masterfully. And I think, yeah, all I was keeping in mind was how do we keep the music going?
Hmm.
Because music, of course, comes to stops. There's fermata, there's
Hmm.
stops, or there's pauses, or whatever there are. But the music keeps going on.
Mm.
Mm,
And
mm.
what I think I was trying to simply say was, I think if you take more time here, Bob, by getting from the speech, this is your body can continue the music. So it's not like I stop the speech,
Mm.
I start the song. No, what Astaire was continually doing was he was kind of like letting himself elegantly stumble into the next moment.
Mm.
Mm.
And I think that's all I was
Yeah.
trying to do to make sure that the music never came to full stops.
Mm. Totally.
The
So,
music of his narrative,
yeah.
which
Mm.
included singing as well as speechifying, as much as movement, as much as silences.
Mm. Fantastic. So we are coming to the end of my questions. I do have a couple more. So we're going to
Okay.
start with Bob. Where can people stay up to date with you on the show?
Where can they what?
Stay up to date, follow you, see all the wonderful things you're doing.
Oh, great. Yeah. Well, first of all, the show will be at the White Bear Theater
Hmm.
on Kennington Park Road. And it will be there from Tuesday through Saturday, March 31st through April 4th
Hmm.
at 7:30. It runs approximately 65 minutes. Tickets are on sale on the website. My website is insomedarkvalley.org.
Okay.
And we also have a link there to the show.
Mm.
And yeah, that's the way to see it.
Hmm.
And we certainly hope that a lot of folks in London will come to see it.
Hmm.
There's a beautiful pub downstairs, the White Bear Pub.
Oh yeah,
Hmm.
it's exquisite.
And Billy's actually been there. I haven't been there. He was
Oh.
on holiday, so he went by. It's a very elegant pub, I think.
Yep.
Mm.
And so I'm thrilled. I think
Hmm.
it's going to be a lot of fun. There's about 50 seats.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so we need you.
So I'll put the link below so people can buy tickets online. But my
Yeah.
Thank
final
you.
question is for both of you. So we'll start with Bob. What advice do you have for young creatives then who are looking to do what you do?
Well, first of all, don't do what I do. Do what you do. That
Hmm.
would be the first thing.
Totally.
Um, Young creatives. You know, I teach. I teach as does Billy. Billy's at Northwestern University in Illinois. I'm at University of Southern California here in Los Angeles. Um, and I love that. I love working with his age group.
Hmm.
Been doing it for a long time. Um, I was just thinking about this yesterday. The I think the important thing right now, because you know, we're well aware that you know most of what people are spending their time on with stories, and there are tons of stories
Hmm.
of various lengths, is on screens.
Yeah.
It's on screens, and God knows there's a lot of value to that, that we have access to so much.
Hmm.
The downside might be that when you're thinking about as a young person, well, how do I get attention for something I want to do?
Hmm.
You might be in some fashion, maybe not, but let's say it's a possibility, putting the cart before the horse. You know, it's like what I want to make sure people like pay attention to me and to something I want to do.
Hmm.
What what can I create that seems to be the kind of thing that they want to see?
Got you. Hmm.
As opposed to what do I need to express? What do I want to share
Hmm.
with the others in the world,
Hmm.
right? The great thing is it can go viral and
Yeah.
be shared, literally be shared everywhere in the world. You know, Billy and I didn't have this possibility,
Mm.
Yeah.
you know,
No.
when we were younger, anything near it. So that would be the first thing I would say. It's like, first of all, what do you, in your deepest sense of yourself, really need to express right now? And how do you want to express it?
Hmm.
And then I would say if you choose live theater, try to understand what makes live theater completely unique and different from all of the screen activity.
Hmm.
That it really is, and you know, I'm going to reference now Jerzy Grotowski, who was the great Polish, you know, experimental theoretician and director, you know, last century, and who influenced me a lot. Um, if we boil it down to the essence in theater, it's the live actor in front of the live
Mm.
spectator.
Totally.
Even if you just had one spectator and one actor, you have some possibility of a meeting
Hmm.
that's only going to happen then.
Mm.
So, um, those are the two things I would say in answer to your question.
Yeah, fantastic. So we are running out of time, but Billy, what advice do you have for young creatives?
I think just piggybacking on terms of the, you know, the way people are accessing so much through screens.
Hmm.
Screens are two-dimensional.
Hmm.
The body is three-dimensional. And so what I do with my students who are were all raised on screens.
Hmm.
Their education was on screens, and to this
Totally.
day they're going, I love you,
Yeah.
or oh my God,
Yeah.
is they have been raised in a disembodied way
Hmm.
about life, as far as I'm concerned. And I tend to be a little cantankerous about that. Um, because you know now, for instance, now they're all auditioning. Well,
Hmm.
the way they audition now is through self-tapes and et cetera, et
Got you.
cetera. I get
Hmm.
that. And I understand that. And in fact, I think there's something wonderful about that. But what I'm trying to get the creative to do is to exactly what Bob said. It's not about whatever version of reality you've seen. It's
Hmm.
the version of reality you felt. and pay attention to how your body feels
Hmm.
when you're having that feeling. And then for me, one of the first things to do is to express that with your body. In other words, I'm not
Yeah.
saying don't journal. I'm saying yes, journal, and then look at the journal and get up out of your seat and say, and now say the words of the journal standing up, and
Mm.
maybe now go off book
Yeah.
with them and go around your living room and say them so that you get a sense of the absolute necessity of
Hmm.
joining voice with body, with which is what acting has always been to me,
Mm.
but it feels possibly because of this being raised on this disembodied source of
Hmm.
information, the screen. They have subtle, it's not on purpose. They've just been, they've not, their bodies didn't have to do
Yeah,
something to accomplish something.
totally.
And that's mostly their habit, which makes me probably much more than Bob, much more impatient with them.
Mm.
But, after a while, there's, one or two or three out of 100 who kind of go, oh, you mean I have a body? So, and I'm simply trying to help them use the body as it is, as I say in my classes all the time, it's the pre-puberty body.
Hmm.
Puberty induces self-consciousness. Puberty induces, oh my God, Bob is more handsome than I am. Puberty induces who's my next date. Before puberty, we're all kids kind of, I'm speaking generally, bouncing around.
Yeah.
And every single one of us is an actor, dancer, singer.
Mm.
None of us went to class. So I'm trying to get them to access that body as they do what Bob is actually
Mm.
more clearly than I was saying do, which is just what is it that you feel? It seems like such a banal kind of dualism. It looks a certain way, and I'm saying it's not what it looks like, it's what it feels like. And that
Mm.
sounds kind of almost
Yeah.
banal, but I think that his point of view is what will encourage the student to not feel they have to conform
Mm.
to
Totally.
what they have seen.
Hmm.
Now, maybe conform to what they have felt. You
Hmm.
see a rock singer and you go, okay, now I'm going to go back into my room and I'm going to be Michael Jackson. And most of the kids who went back into the room to do Michael Jackson or Beyonce or Coy Leroy, they were also doing the movements.
Yeah.
Or James Brown, who I went into my bedroom to do. They're
Yeah.
also doing the movements of James Brown's song.
Mm.
Hmm.
So I'm just sort of saying, you want to write a play, just make sure you can sing it.
Mm.
That's great.
Yeah. So I said at the beginning, but I'll end the same way. Thank you so much for speaking to me, and I wish you the best of luck, and I'll speak to you soon.